Hello everyone, I hope you are doing well. Today lecture about teaching language construction. Let us have a start. Studying of a specific feature of the language is new to students, and they want to understand and use it, or because they want to revise it in order to improve their ability to use it without making errors. The immediate goal of this kind of study is to increase knowledge of the language system so that the longer term aims of improving productive and receptive skills can be achieved. What do we mean by studying structure and use, or studying language constructions? That means I divide the language into subfields or sub-areas and teach these areas each alone. Okay, for example, the morphology of forms, I will teach it alone. Then I will move to the syntax of phrases or clauses and sentences. Later I will move to vocabulary and the meaning and functions that phrases and sentences can convey, and pronunciation and spelling. That's what we mean by language construction or structure and use. Okay, so the student can know each field alone and the use of this field. The status of language study depends on why and when it occurs. That means where the study activity should be placed in the sequence. Should the focus on any necessary language forms take place before, during, or after the performance of a communicative task or a receptive skills activity? It means should I learn them, for example, reading before writing, or should I teach both of them together? What should I do? In which time I will teach them writing, and so on. When and why I should them, okay? I have to point a specific time, depends on the student needs, and also a reason to teach this skill. One approach is for students to study language in variety ways, explore a topic, and then use what they have learned to perform a task. Alternatively, it may happen during a task-based sequence. A third option is to study forms after the students have performed the task. This usually happens as a form of language repair when the task has shown up language problems, or when students may have found the task easier if they had been able to produce certain language forms which they did not use at all. Many study activities depend on PPP method, which include presentation, practice, and production. This method encourages students to discover or notice language before we ask them to use it. Preface a study exercise with activities which show us how much of the language before we ask them to use it. Preface a study exercise with activities which show us how much of the language in question is already known. Ask students to research language as part of an ongoing lesson sequence. and may irrelative the study with all its elements. Now, how could a language teacher choose a study activities? Actually, this depends on three main points, which they are following planning principles and assessing language study activities for use in class, and evaluating a study activity after use in a class. What do we mean by following study activities? It means we need to bear general planning principles in mind. We need to offer a varied diet of exercises because all students have different learning styles, and also because we want help them sustain motivation. That means if I am going to teach my student by practice, I have also to explain for them alone. Why? Because my students have different minds, have different needs, okay? That's what we mean by following planning principles. Assessing language study activity for use in class. That means how effective it will be. It should justify the time we will need to spend on it both before and during lesson. Does the activity demonstrate meaning and use clearly? And that it's all opportunities? We have to be confident that it will engage our learners successfully. One way of assessing study activities is to judge efficiency and their appropriacy. The term of efficiency, economy, time and efficiency. Economy means time. An easy activity is one that is simple for the teacher to use and organize. An efficacious activity is one that works. In terms of appropriacy, we need to judge whether the activity is suitable for the time of the day, the classroom conditions, and for a particular group of students, taking into account their level, their educational background, and their cultural sensibilities. What about evaluating a study activity after use in class? That means answer questions such as whether or not the exercise helps a student to learn the new language, which it means efficiency, and whether students were engaged by it, it means appropriacy, and whether or not we want to use it again or modify for the next use. Individual students learn at different speeds and in different ways. These two facts taken together, it means mixed ability. If we are not sure whether or not students know the language we are about to ask them to study, we will need to find this information out. If we don't, we risk teaching students things they already know or assuming knowledge they do not have. And one way of avoiding teaching already known language is to have students perform tasks also attempting to elect the new language form. How can we explain things? We can explain them by meanings, or we can explain them by language construction or construction. In explaining meaning, it means we showing it for actions we can use mime or gestures. We can demonstrate superlative activities by using hand and arm movement. Many teachers have standard gestures to explain. We can also use facial expressions, pictures, diagrams, timelines. We can describe the meaning of words. We can list vocabulary items to explain concepts. We can use check questions and translating words and phrases. That's what we mean by explain meaning. While explain constructions through modeling sentences and phrases, many teachers use fingers or hands. We can also demonstrate word and sentence stress by beating time with or without arms. We can show intonations pattern by drawing the tune in the air. Diagrams on boards or overhead projects, writing words on individual cards, and used to show parts of a speech stress pattern and sentence construction. And now, how we practice or how we accurate reproduction of what we teach. We can do by repetition, which means can be either choral or individual. For choral repetition to be effective, start the chorus. Help the student with the rhythm by conducting with your arms and hands. Choral repetition can be invigorating because it gives all students a chance to speak together rather than being show up individually. Sometimes teachers divide the class in half, semi-chorus. We may ask for individual repetition after chorus by nominating. Be carefully not to nominate students in obvious order. Will not keep students on their toes. In individual repetition, students to say the word or phrase quietly to themselves, memorizing it a few times as they get used to saying it. Or by drills, we may organize a quick cue response session to encourage controlled practice of the new language. We can use cards as a cue. Cues can be also verbal or nonverbal. If we think students need more controlled practice, we can put them in pairs and ask them to continue saying the new words or phrases to each other. Now, how can the student discover and practice language construction? Inductive approach, students see examples of language and try to work out how it put together. If we want students to understand how speakers in informal conversation use certain phrases as delaying tactics or to buy thinking times, we may get them to listen again. Discover activities are especially useful when students are looking at the construction of a specific language for the second or third time. If students do not like inductive approach, they would prefer to be spoon-fed. The deductive work they are doing now is intended to expand their knowledge and revise things they are already familiar with. For example, if we want to teach past simple tense, we are not going to write the form in the board. No, we are going to read a passage or a topic that includes the past tense, past simple tense, and we will ask the student to find the form in this passage, and they will discover and practice and learn by themselves. That's what we mean by inductive approach. It means no clear form on the board. Or we could do this by research. We could ask the student to consult a dictionary or encourage them to use search engines, such as Google. When students search language, they are far more likely to remember what they find out than if they sit passively and are given words effective at higher levels. This can be done with high school, not preliminary school, okay? Also, we may ask them to use the language they have discovered, like discovery activities. Overdrilling can have a very demotivating effect. For more information and details, please visit the link in the description box. Thank you and have a good day.